Hey everyone, welcome to a really cool and interesting episode of BioLogic Science News. A new study published in Nature Ecology and Evolution explored the links between the brain sizes of various cetaceans like whales and dolphins, and the kinds of social behaviors that they exhibit, how complex their social dynamics and their group behaviors are. The researchers came from both sides of the Atlantic, including research teams at the University of British Columbia in Canada, at Stanford University in the US, and at the University of Manchester in Great Britain. The authors of the study wanted to test two hypotheses on brain development in animals with higher levels of intelligence. One idea is called the social brain hypothesis, which argues that large brains are developed as the size and the complexity of a typical social group increases. This is supported by in-the-field evidence. Humans have larger brains than chimps, and our natural social groups, which are about 150 people, are about 3 times the size of a chimp's average social group, which is about 50 individuals. Evidence against this comes in the form of meerkats, who have complex social relationships and social behaviors, but they have relatively small brains. The other idea that the researchers want to test is the cultural brain hypothesis, which argues that large brains are developed as a result of culturally transmitted information accumulating over time and creating non-genetic behavioral adaptations in response to various changes or challenges in the environment. And it's these non-genetic behavioral adaptations, the various ways that we grow food or that we herd animals, or the various methods that the cetaceans use to hunt, all of these things can be learned and passed on. When you specialize in certain behaviors, that can encourage brain development in certain regions and brain atrophy in other regions. It just depends on what the species decides to use and to emphasize more often over time. Both of these hypotheses aren't mutually exclusive, so both interpersonal and cultural interactions are believed to be vehicles for brain development and increases in brain size. The researchers tried to test the magnitude of these possible influences in their study. They looked at 90 species of cetaceans, like porpoises, dolphins, and whales, and they compiled data on both their brain size and morphologies and their social behaviors. The researchers immediately noticed a distinct trend between larger brain size and higher complexity and nuance in their social interactions, many of which mimic those that are seen in humans and human society. For example, cetaceans engage in cooperative hunting. Instead of competing with other similar predators for food, they work together to increase everyone's chances at getting a meal. They form relationships built on alliances that work towards achieving goals, like making a successful hunt. Now, if we're to extrapolate that into human terms, this is the same root behavioral motivation that encourages us to work in groups, to be social and cooperate in teams, to create companies, and goal-specific organizations, and governments. The cetaceans also have complex verbal interactions. All these cetacean species had species-specific vocalizations, and within these, they even had region-specific vocalizations, or dialects. This means that cetaceans literally have accents, like humans do. They also have names, or sounds that are used like names. These are specific sounds, sometimes called signature whistles, that the cetaceans use to identify each other. They also transmit cultural information from parent to child in the form of hunting techniques and ways of tool use, just like a human parent teaches their child how to use the toilet or how to tie their shoes. Cetaceans show a complex understanding of parenting and care for the young because they engage in an activity called alloparenting. Alloparenting is where adults look after children that aren't their own, that aren't their children genetically. This implies a few social structures or social dynamics, depending on how you look at it. The alloparent could be a nanny in the group. It could be a non-hunting adult who's watching the kids while the rest of the adult cetaceans are hunting something and getting food. It demonstrates a kind of community trust between parents and their similar-aged peers over childcare. The coolest thing that cetaceans do, in my opinion, is have fun and play around. The findings indicate that complex societies with nuanced social behavior are correlated with larger, more complex brains. But this doesn't quite answer other questions about higher intelligence and non-human animals. We still don't really understand what it's like to be them, to be a dolphin's brain, living in a dolphin's body, and swimming and hunting and socializing with other dolphins. We don't really even understand our own sentience very well, so trying to explain the sentience of another species might seem impossible. Although studies like this help us bridge the gap, they help us find commonalities. By learning how the brain structures and development patterns of the cetacean influence their social behavior and their cultural development, we can take those same principles that we learn and apply them to ourselves and learn more about our own brains and how our human brain morphology influences our human social interactions and our human cultures.